The mining drill hit something solid deep beneath the red desert soil. The Crithian worker pulled the machine back and stared at the scanner. Metal. Old metal. Very old. "Supervisor, we found something," the worker called through his communicator. The mining site sat in what the Crithians called Zone 7, a flat wasteland that stretched for hundreds of miles. They had been here for 6 months pulling valuable minerals from the ground. The planet was rich with resources, and the Crithian collective had been harvesting them for nearly 400 years. Nobody remembered what this world was called before. The old records were lost or deleted long ago. The Crithians simply knew it as Colony World 42, a resource planet with a pleasant atmosphere and weak gravity, perfect for mining operations. The supervisor arrived within minutes. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the scanner readings. "Dig it out carefully," he ordered. "If it's ancient tech, the collective will want to see it." The workers spent 3 hours excavating the object. When they finally pulled it free, they found a metal cylinder about 6 feet long. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that none of them recognized. The metal was corroded but still intact, sealed tight against the elements. The supervisor sent images to the orbital station. Within an hour, he received orders to transport the object immediately. The collective's head researcher wanted to examine it personally. On the orbital station high above the planet, Overseer Zekthar watched as technicians brought the cylinder into the research lab. He was curious. In all his years managing this colony, they had never found anything like this. "Can you open it?" he asked the lead technician. "Working on it now, Overseer. The seal is remarkably preserved." It took another 2 hours, but eventually the technicians cracked the seal. The cylinder hissed as air escaped from inside. When they opened it fully, they found it packed with objects and data storage devices. There were photographs printed on strange paper. Images of creatures with smooth skin, standing on 2 legs with hair on their heads. They were gathered in groups, smiling at the camera. Buildings rose behind them, tall structures made of glass and metal. "What species is this?" Zekthar asked. The technician scanned the images and checked the collective's database. "Unknown, Overseer. No match in our records." They found more items inside. A flag with red and white stripes and stars on a blue field. Books written in an unknown language. A small device that looked like a primitive computer. And at the very bottom, a metal plaque with engraved words. The technician ran the words through a translation matrix. It took several attempts, but finally the computer produced results. It says, "Time capsule, buried 2251. To whoever finds this, we are humanity. We are the children of Earth. We were forced to leave our home, but we will never forget. We will return. This is our world, and we will reclaim it." Zekthar laughed. "Humanity, Earth? I've never heard of them." "Searching the archives now, Overseer." The technician's fingers moved quickly across his console. "Found something. Very old records from the initial colonization of this world. 400 years ago, there was a species living here. They called themselves humans. They called the planet Earth. What happened to them? According to records, they were primitive and weak. When the collective arrived, they fled in ships. Most of the ships were destroyed in pursuit. The survivors scattered into deep space. They were considered extinct within 50 years. Zekthar looked at the photographs again. The humans looked fragile, small, weak. And they thought they would return? He laughed again. 400 years and we've heard nothing from them. They're dead, all of them. But the technician was frowning at his screen. "Overseer, the capsule had a transmitter inside. It activated when we opened the seal." "What kind of transmitter?" "A powerful one. It just sent a signal into deep space. A very specific signal, aimed at coordinates far beyond our territory." Zekthar felt a small spike of concern. "Can you trace where it went?" "The signal was directed toward a region we've never explored. At least 40 light years from here. But Overseer, the signal was strong. If anyone was listening out there, they heard it." Zekthar waved a hand dismissively. "It doesn't matter. Those humans are extinct. Even if a few survived, they would be scattered and weak. They're no threat to the collective." He was wrong. 40 light years away in the darkness between stars, a massive ship received the signal. The ship was called the Defiant Dawn, and it was one of 200 vessels in the human fleet. Inside the ship, alarms began to sound. Captain Jake Morrison was in his quarters when the alert came through. He was a tall man with short dark hair and tired eyes. He had been born on this ship 38 years ago. His parents had been born on this ship. His grandparents, too. Nobody in his family had ever seen Earth, but they all knew about it. Every human knew about Earth. Jake rushed to the bridge. His second-in-command, Ben Torres, was already there, staring at the main screen. "Captain, you need to see this," Ben said. Jake looked at the screen. A message was displayed there, decoded from the signal they had received. It was simple, just a few words. Time capsule opened, Earth, coordinates attached. Jake's heart began to pound. "Is this real?" "We've confirmed it, sir." The signal came from Earth's location. Someone opened one of the capsules. 400 years ago, when humanity fled Earth, they left behind hundreds of time capsules buried across the planet. Each one contained a transmitter programmed to send a signal if opened. It was a desperate plan, a hope that maybe, someday, humanity would return. For 4 centuries, the human fleet had wandered through space. They had settled on harsh worlds with heavy gravity. They had fought wars with alien species. They had struggled and suffered and evolved. They had built new technology, stronger ships, better weapons. They had survived when everyone said they would die, and they had waited for this signal. "Contact Admiral Bennett," Jake ordered. "Tell her we received the signal. Tell her it's time." Ben smiled. It was a fierce smile, full of teeth. "Time to go home?" "Time to go home," Jake confirmed. Within hours, the entire human fleet gathered. 200 warships, each one carrying thousands of people. They were not the same humans who had fled Earth 400 years ago. They were harder, stronger, more dangerous. Admiral Claire Bennett addressed the fleet from her flagship. She was an older woman with gray hair and scars on her face from old battles. Her voice was steady and strong. "People of the fleet," she began. "Today we received the signal we've been waiting for. Someone has found one of our capsules on Earth. Our homeworld still exists, and now we're going to take it back." Cheers erupted across every ship. People who had never seen Earth cried with joy. They had heard stories all their lives. They had seen pictures and videos. They had dreamed of trees and oceans and blue skies. "We don't know who controls Earth now," Admiral Bennett continued, "but it doesn't matter. That world belongs to us. It's in our blood, in our bones. Our ancestors were driven away, but we survived. We grew stronger, and now we're returning." On the defiant dawn, Jake gathered his senior officers. Dr. Lisa Grant, the ship's chief scientist, stood beside him. She was younger than Jake, with red hair tied back in a tight bun. "We'll need to be careful," Lisa said. "We don't know what we're walking into. The species that took Earth might be powerful. Then we'll be more powerful," Jake replied simply. Amy Sullivan, their best pilot, grinned from her seat. She was small and quick, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I've been training my whole life for this. Let's show them what humans can do." The fleet began to move. 200 ships all pointed toward the same destination. Earth. Home. The journey would take 3 weeks using their fastest engines, 3 weeks to cross 40 light years. The Crithians didn't have engines that fast. Most species in the galaxy didn't. But humans had developed the technology out of necessity. When you're running for your life, you learn to move quickly. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the stars streak past. He thought about his grandmother, who had told him stories when he was young. Stories about Earth, about forests so thick you couldn't see through them, about oceans that stretched forever, about cities filled with millions of people. "We're coming," he whispered to himself. "We're finally coming home." On Earth, Overseer Zekthar had forgotten about the signal within a day. He had more important things to worry about. Production quotas, supply shipments, worker efficiency. The time capsule and its strange transmitter were just curiosities, nothing more. But deep in the research lab, one technician couldn't stop thinking about it. He kept looking at the photographs from the capsule. The humans in those pictures looked so happy, so alive. He wondered what had happened to them. He wondered if any of them had survived out there in the dark. He would find out soon enough. The human fleet was coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The edge of the solar system was dark and cold. Neptune hung in the distance like a blue jewel against the black. This far from the sun, everything was frozen and silent. Then space itself seemed to tear open. It started as a shimmer, like heat waves on a summer day. Then the shimmer grew larger, brighter, until it became a swirling portal of light and energy, and through that portal, the human fleet emerged. 200 ships appeared in the span of 30 seconds. They were massive vessels, each one larger than anything the Crithians had ever built. Their hulls were dark gray, covered in armor plating that could withstand tremendous punishment. Weapons bristled from every surface. On the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, Jake Morrison watched Earth appear on the view screen. It was still just a small blue dot from this distance, but it was there. Real. After 400 years, humanity could see their homeworld again. "All ships reporting in, Captain," Ben Torres said. "The fleet is intact. No damage from the jump. Good, begin scanner sweeps. I want to know everything about this system. How many ships are here? Where are their stations? What kind of defenses do they have?" The scanners went to work. Within minutes they had results, Captain, detecting multiple defense stations in orbit around Earth, at least 50 of them, also reading numerous ships, various sizes. Looks like patrol vessels and cargo transports. Any warships? Yes, sir. 12 large warships in high orbit. They appear to be Crethian design. Jake nodded slowly. 12 warships against our 200. I almost feel sorry for them. Lisa Grant stepped forward, studying the scanner data. "Captain, I'm picking up something else." "The planet's surface. It's been heavily altered. Deforestation is extensive. The oceans show high pollution levels. They've been strip mining the continents." Jake's jaw tightened. 400 years, and the Crithians had spent all that time destroying Earth. Rage built in his chest, hot and fierce. "Captain," Ben said quietly, "we're being hailed. The Crithians detected us. Put it through." The view screen changed. A Crithian face appeared, gray-skinned with large black eyes. It was Overseer Zekthar, though Jake didn't know his name yet. "Unidentified vessels," Zekthar said in a harsh voice. "You are approaching collective territory. Identify yourselves immediately and state your purpose." Jake stood from his chair. He wore a dark uniform with no decorations except a single patch on his shoulder. The patch showed Earth with the words "Never Forget" written beneath it. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human fleet," he said calmly. "We're here to reclaim our homeworld." Zekthar stared at him. For a moment there was only silence. Then the Crithian laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "Human? Did you say human? That species is extinct. They died out centuries ago." "We're not extinct," Jake replied. "We're just very, very angry." "This is ridiculous," Zekthar snapped. "Even if you are the descendants of the primitives who once lived here, this world belongs to the collective now. You have no claim to it. Leave immediately or you will be destroyed." Jake smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You can try." He cut the transmission. Then he turned to Ben. "Get Admiral Bennett on the line and signal all ships. It's time to show them what we can do." Admiral Bennett's face appeared on screen from her flagship. "Captain Morrison." "Are you ready?" "Yes, Admiral. They've demanded we leave. I expected as much. Let's give them a demonstration." Amy Sullivan's squadron is cleared for attack. Target the 3 nearest defense stations. Show the Crithians that we're not the same species they remember. Jake switched channels. "Lieutenant Sullivan, you're cleared for your attack run. Make it impressive." From her cockpit, Amy Sullivan grinned. She was strapped into a sleek fighter craft, one of 20 in her squadron. The fighters were small and fast, equipped with weapons that the Crithians had never seen before. "Copy that, Captain." "All right, people. You heard the man. Let's go say hello." The 20 fighters launched from their carriers and shot forward at incredible speed. They crossed the distance to the first defense station in less than 3 minutes. On the defense station, Crithian soldiers scrambled to battle positions. Alarms blared throughout the structure. The station's commander was shouting orders, trying to organize a defense. "All weapons target those small craft. Fire at will." The station's guns opened fire. Energy bolts and missiles streaked through space toward Amy's squadron. But the human fighters moved like nothing the Crithians had ever encountered. They twisted and spun, dodging every shot with impossible precision. Amy's fighter dove toward the station. Her targeting computer locked on. Target acquired, firing. She pressed the trigger. A single projectile launched from her fighter. It was small, barely larger than a fist, but it moved at a significant fraction of light speed, and it was made of materials engineered specifically to pierce armor. The projectile hit the defense station's shield generator. The shields flickered and died. 3 more fighters fired at the same moment, their rounds slamming into the station's hull. Metal tore like paper. Explosions rippled across the structure. In 15 seconds, the defense station was a floating wreck. "Target 1 is down," Amy reported calmly. "Moving to Target 2. The second and third stations died just as quickly. The Crithian crews barely had time to react before their stations were destroyed. The remaining 47 stations began powering up their weapons, but they were slow. Built for defense against conventional attacks, they weren't ready for humanity. On Earth's surface, in the main command center, Overseer Zekthar watched in horror as 3 of his defense stations vanished from the tactical display. 3 stations, destroyed in less than 6 minutes. How is this possible? He demanded. Those were military-grade installations. Sir, their fighters are too fast. Our targeting systems can't track them, and their weapons. They're cutting through our shields like they're not even there. Zekthar felt fear creep into his chest. He had laughed at the humans, called them primitives, extinct. He had been very wrong. Get me the fleet, he ordered. All warships are to engage the human vessels immediately. And send a priority message to the collective homeworld. Tell them we need reinforcements. Sir, the nearest reinforcements are weeks away. Then send the message anyway. The 12 Crithian warships moved to intercept the human fleet. They were large vessels, well-armed and heavily armored. Each one carried a crew of thousands. In any normal engagement, 12 warships would be a significant force. But this was not a normal engagement. Admiral Bennett watched the Crithian ships approach. All vessels, spread formation. Prepare gravitational weapons. Let's show them something they've never seen before. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each one surrounding the Crithian warships from different angles. Then they activated weapons that the Crithians couldn't comprehend, gravitational weapons, technology developed by humans during their 400 years in exile. Instead of firing energy or projectiles, these weapons manipulated gravity itself. The lead Crithian warship suddenly lurched sideways as gravity pulled it in an impossible direction. Metal groaned and buckled. The ship's structure began to tear itself apart from the inside. What's happening? The Crithian captain screamed. Report. Unknown weapon, sir. It's affecting our entire ship. The ship exploded, not from a conventional explosion, but from the gravitational forces literally ripping it apart. Pieces of the vessel scattered in all directions. 11 more times the same thing happened. 11 Crithian warships destroyed in minutes. The crews never even understood what killed them. Jake watched from the defiant dawn. Part of him felt satisfaction. These were the aliens who had taken Earth, who had driven humanity into exile, who had spent 400 years destroying the planet that humans loved. But part of him felt something else. Almost pity. The Crithians had no idea what they were facing. Captain, Ben said, we're receiving another transmission from the surface. It's the Crithian overseer again. Put it through. Zekthar's face appeared, but he looked different now. His confidence was gone, replaced by fear. Captain Morrison, please, we need to talk. Now you want to talk? Jake said coldly. We had no idea. We thought humans were extinct. We didn't know you had survived. Please, there must be a way to resolve this peacefully. Jake leaned forward. You took our world. You destroyed our forests. You polluted our oceans. You erased our cities. And now you want peace? We can negotiate, Zekthar said desperately. The collective can offer compensation, resources, technology, whatever you need. There's only one thing we need, Jake replied. Earth. And we're going to take it back. He cut the transmission again. Admiral Bennett's voice came through on the fleet channel. All ships prepare for orbital assault. Ground forces ready for deployment. We're taking back our homeworld. Throughout the human fleet, soldiers prepared for battle. They checked their weapons and armor. They said prayers and made promises. They thought about Earth, the planet they had never seen but had dreamed about all their lives. On the defiant dawn, Jake gathered his senior officers one last time before the assault began. This is it, he said quietly. 400 years and we're finally home. But we're not just here to visit. We're here to stay. Whatever it takes, we're taking Earth back. Amy Sullivan checked her sidearm. Whatever it takes, she echoed. The drop pods fell from the sky like metal rain. Greg Carter sat inside one of them, strapped tight into his harness. Around him, 20 other soldiers waited in silence. The pod shook and rattled as it descended through Earth's atmosphere. Through the small window, Greg could see fire surrounding the pod as friction heated its outer shell. He had trained for this moment his entire life. He was 32 years old and had been a soldier since he was 18. He had fought on 6 different worlds, always winning, always surviving. But this was different. This was Earth. 30 seconds to impact, the computer announced. Greg checked his rifle one more time. It was a weapon that could punch through 6 inches of steel. His armor was thick and powered, making him stronger and faster than any unaugmented human. But the real advantage was simpler than that. 400 years of living on high-gravity worlds had changed humanity. Children born and raised in 2 or 3 times Earth's gravity grew up stronger. Their bones were denser. Their muscles were more powerful. And after generations of this, humans had evolved into something more formidable. 10 seconds. Greg gripped his harness. The pod slammed into the ground with tremendous force. The impact would have killed an unarmored person. But Greg and his soldiers barely felt it. The door blew open. Greg rushed out, rifle ready. He found himself standing in what had once been a forest. Now it was just bare dirt and stumps. The Crithians had cut down every tree for miles. Rage filled Greg's chest. This was Earth. This was supposed to be beautiful. Carter to command, he spoke into his radio. Team 7 is on the ground. Beginning sweep of the sector. Copy that, Team 7. General Kate Phillips replied from the orbiting command ship. Multiple Crithian ground forces detected in your area. Engage and neutralize. Yes, ma'am, Greg signaled to his team. They spread out in formation and began moving through the devastated landscape. It took less than 5 minutes to make contact with the enemy. The Crithian patrol consisted of 12 soldiers. They wore combat armor and carried energy weapons. When they saw the humans, they opened fire immediately. Energy bolts filled the air. Greg felt several hit his armor, but they barely left scorch marks. Human armor had been designed to withstand much worse. Greg raised his rifle and fired back. The Crithian soldiers had shields, but the human bullets tore through them. 3 Crithians fell in the first seconds. The rest tried to take cover behind rocks and debris. It didn't help. Greg's team moved forward with terrifying speed. In the heavy gravity of the worlds they came from, they had learned to move quickly despite the weight. Here on Earth, with its lighter gravity, they were faster than the Crithians could believe. One of Greg's soldiers, a woman named Kelly Brooks, reached the Crithian position in seconds. She grabbed a Crithian soldier and lifted him off the ground with one hand. The alien struggled, but Kelly was far stronger. She threw him 20 feet into a rock. The battle was over in less than a minute. All 12 Crithian soldiers were dead or unconscious. Too easy, Kelly said, breathing hard. They're not used to fighting something stronger than them, Greg replied. Let's keep moving. Across Earth's surface, similar scenes played out hundreds of times. Human ground forces landed in waves, overwhelming Crithian defensive positions. The aliens had numbers and established positions. But the humans had something more important. They had rage. In orbit, Jake Morrison watched the battle reports flow in. Every engagement was a human victory. The Crithians couldn't stop them. Captain, Ben Torres said, we're receiving a transmission from the Crithian Command Center. They're requesting a ceasefire. Denied, Jake said immediately. Lisa Grant looked up from her station. Captain, we've been analyzing the Crithian data networks. I found something you need to see. She brought up images on the main screen. They showed underground facilities deep beneath Earth's surface. Jake leaned forward, studying them. What am I looking at? Crithian research labs. Captain, they kept humans. Some of the people who didn't escape 400 years ago. The Crithians captured them, and their descendants have been held in these facilities for generations. Jake felt his blood turn cold. What did they do to them? Lisa's voice shook slightly. Experiments. They studied human biology. They wanted to understand why humans could survive in such harsh conditions. They weren't kind about it. Ben slammed his fist on the console. Those monsters. Jake's hands clenched into fists. He had been willing to accept Crithian's surrender. To let them leave Earth peacefully. Not anymore. Send a priority message to Admiral Bennett, he said quietly. Tell her what we found. Tell her there will be no mercy. On the planet's surface, Greg's team reached one of the underground facilities. It was hidden beneath what had once been a human city. Now only ruins remained above ground. Command, we found the entrance, Greg reported. Copy that, General Phillips replied. Proceed with caution. We don't know what you'll find down there. Greg led his team down into the darkness. The facility was huge, stretching deep into the earth. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows. The whole place smelled wrong, like chemicals and fear. They found the cells on the 3rd level down. Behind reinforced glass walls were humans. But they looked wrong, pale and thin with haunted eyes. Some were strapped to medical tables. Others huddled in corners, too afraid to move. Greg stopped at the first cell. Inside was a woman, maybe 30 years old. She stared at him with empty eyes. "We're here to help," Greg said gently. "We're humans too. We came back." The woman didn't respond. She just stared. Kelly found the controls and opened the cells. The imprisoned humans didn't move at first. They had spent their entire lives in these facilities. Freedom was something they couldn't even understand anymore. "Get medical teams down here," Greg ordered, "and find any Krithian researchers. I have questions for them." They found 5 Krithian scientists trying to hide in a storage room. Greg's soldiers dragged them out into the hallway. "What did you do to them?" Greg demanded, gesturing at the freed humans. One of the Krithians, braver or more foolish than the others, spoke up. "We were studying them, trying to understand human biology. It was important research." "Research?" Kelly said, her voice dangerous. "You tortured them. We had authorization from the collective. These humans were property of—" Kelly hit him. Her armored fist broke his jaw. The Krithian collapsed, moaning in pain. "Property?" she said. "We're not property. We're humans, and you're going to answer for this." News of the underground facilities spread through the human fleet rapidly. Soldiers who had been willing to show some mercy to the Krithians now had no such inclinations. Every human in the fleet had the same thought. The Krithians had to pay. Admiral Bennett made a fleet-wide announcement. "All forces, I am authorizing unrestricted engagement. Any Krithian military presence on Earth is to be eliminated. No quarter. No surrender. They had 400 years to leave our world. They chose to stay. They chose to hurt our people. Now they face the consequences." The battle intensified. Human forces pushed forward on every front. The Krithians tried to establish defensive lines, but nothing could stop the human advance. In the former location of New York City, now just a mining pit, a major battle erupted. 5,000 Krithian soldiers held the position, supported by armored vehicles and artillery. General Kate Phillips herself led the assault. She was 50 years old, a veteran of countless battles, and she was done being patient. "All units, advance," she ordered. The human force, 3,000 strong, charged the Krithian position. Energy weapons and conventional bullets filled the air. Explosions rocked the ground. But the humans kept coming. Kate's soldiers reached the Krithian lines and broke through. The close combat was brutal and short. Human soldiers, stronger and faster than the Krithians, overwhelmed the defenders. In 30 minutes, the battle was over. Kate stood in the center of what had once been Times Square. Now it was just a crater in the ground. She looked around at the devastation and felt tears in her eyes. "This was a city once," she said to her second-in-command. "Millions of people lived here. Now it's nothing. We'll rebuild it, General. We'll make Earth beautiful again." Kate nodded slowly. "Yes, but first we finish this." By the end of the first day, human forces controlled 60% of Earth's surface. Krithian resistance was collapsing. Their soldiers were surrendering in groups, throwing down their weapons and begging for mercy. Jake Morrison received reports of the surrenders. He felt no satisfaction. Only a cold, hard anger. "What do we do with the prisoners, Captain?" Ben asked. "Hold them for now. We'll decide later, but keep them under heavy guard." "I don't trust them." Lisa Grant approached Jake. She had been analyzing more Krithian data. "Captain, I found something else. The Krithians have been broadcasting back to their homeworld. They've been sending detailed reports about their experiments on humans, about Earth's resources, about everything they've done here." Jake's jaw tightened. "So the whole Krithian collective knows what happened here?" "Yes, sir. And there's more. The Krithian homeworld has already started assembling a fleet to come here. They're preparing to defend their claim on Earth. How long until they arrive?" "At least 2 months. But, Captain, their fleet will be large. Hundreds of ships." Jake looked at the image of Earth on the main screen. His homeworld. 3 weeks after the liberation of Earth, Admiral Claire Bennett called a council meeting. The meeting took place on her flagship, the Vengeance, in a large conference room that overlooked the planet below. Jake Morrison was there, along with the other fleet captains. General Kate Phillips represented the ground forces. Dr. Lisa Grant attended as the chief science advisor. And sitting at the far end of the table was Colonel Danny Wright, commander of the Special Operations Division. Danny was a quiet man with gray eyes and scars on his hands. He had spent 20 years leading missions behind enemy lines on a dozen different worlds. If there was a dangerous job that needed doing, Danny was the one who did it. Admiral Bennett stood at the head of the table. She looked tired. The liberation of Earth had been successful, but it had taken its toll on everyone. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We need to make some difficult decisions. Earth is secure. Crithian resistance has collapsed. We freed all the imprisoned humans and sent them for medical treatment, but we have a new problem." She brought up a holographic display. It showed the Crithian homeworld, a planet 60 light-years away called Crithios. Intelligence reports indicate the Crithian collective is assembling a massive fleet. They plan to retake Earth by force. Current estimates put their fleet size at over 300 warships. Murmurs spread through the room. 300 ships against the human fleet's 200. The humans had superior technology, but those were not good odds. "We have two options," Admiral Bennett continued. "We can fortify Earth and prepare for their attack. Build defenses. Set traps. Make them pay for every inch, or—" She paused, letting the word hang in the air. "Or," Jake prompted, "or we take the fight to them. We strike their homeworld before their fleet can launch. We show the entire galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around anymore." The room erupted in discussion. Some captains argued for defense. Others wanted to attack. The debate grew heated. Finally, General Kate Phillips slammed her hand on the table. "Enough, Admiral. What does the Council of Freed Humans say?" "The ones we rescued from the facilities. They've suffered more than any of us. They deserve a voice in this." Admiral Bennett nodded slowly. "I spoke with their representatives yesterday. They were unanimous. They want justice. They want the Crithians to pay for 400 years of occupation and torture. Justice or revenge?" one of the captains asked quietly. "Is there a difference?" Jake replied. "They took our world. They enslaved our people. They destroyed our forests and polluted our oceans. If we just sit here and wait, we're telling the galaxy that humans are still prey, still weak. I say we go to their homeworld. We show them what happens when you hurt humanity." Lisa Grant spoke up. "Captain Morrison, if we attack their homeworld, we could be starting a war that spreads across the entire galaxy. Other species might see us as aggressors. Let them," Jake said coldly. "I'm tired of worrying about what other species think. For 400 years, we've been running and hiding and surviving. Now we're strong enough to fight back. The Crithians need to learn that there are consequences for their actions." Danny Wright had been quiet until now. He leaned forward, his voice calm. "Admiral, if you want to strike Crithios, my teams can do it. We can go in quietly, sabotage their fleet before it launches. Minimal casualties on both sides." Admiral Bennett shook her head. "No, Colonel. If we do this, we don't do it quietly. We want the whole galaxy to see. We want every species out there to understand that humanity has returned, and we're not the same species we were 400 years ago." She looked around the table at each person. "I'm not going to order this. This decision is too important. We'll put it to a vote. All in favor of fortifying Earth and waiting for the Crithian attack?" 3 captains raised their hands. "All in favor of taking the war to Crithios?" Everyone else raised their hands, including Jake, Kate, and Danny. Admiral Bennett took a deep breath. "Then it's decided. We'll split the fleet. 100 ships will remain here to protect Earth. The other 100 will come with me to Crithios. We leave in 1 week. Use that time to prepare. Repair your ships. Talk to your crews. This will be the largest military operation humanity has attempted in our history." After the meeting, Jake returned to the Defiant Dawn. His crew was waiting for him on the bridge. "Well?" Ben Torres asked. "We're going to war," Jake replied. "Real war. Not just defending ourselves. We're taking the fight to the Crithian homeworld." Amy Sullivan grinned. "About time." Lisa Grant looked worried. "Captain, are we doing the right thing? What if this escalates beyond our control?" Jake walked to the viewport and stared out at Earth. From orbit, it looked beautiful despite the damage. Blue oceans, white clouds, green patches where forests were beginning to regrow. "Lisa, do you know what I think about every night before I sleep?" he asked quietly. "No, sir. I think about the humans we found in those facilities. People who spent their entire lives in cages, who were experimented on like animals, who never got to see the sun or feel grass under their feet. And I think about the fact that the Crithians did that for 400 years, not by accident, not in the heat of war. They did it deliberately, coldly, because they thought they could get away with it." He turned to face his crew. "So yes, we're doing the right thing. Because if we don't, if we just let them go, then we're telling the galaxy that you can hurt humans without consequences. I won't accept that. Not anymore." The week passed quickly. The human fleet prepared for war. Ships were repaired and armed. Soldiers trained and planned. Engineers worked around the clock to ensure every vessel was ready. During that week, Jake visited Earth's surface for the first time. He took a shuttle down to what had once been a major city. Now it was ruins and mining pits. He walked through the devastation alone. His boots crunched on gravel that had once been buildings. He saw the stumps of trees that had stood for centuries. He smelled the pollution in the air, and he made a promise to the planet beneath his feet. "We'll make you beautiful again." "I swear it. But first, we have to finish this." On the 6th day, Danny Wright came to see Jake. The colonel looked troubled. "Captain, I need to talk to you about something." "What is it, Colonel?" Danny pulled up a holographic image. It showed a massive structure in orbit around Crithios. Intelligence has identified this as the Stellar Disruptor. It's a weapon the Crithians have been developing. According to the data we captured, it's designed to destabilize stars. Jake felt his blood run cold. They can destroy entire solar systems. Potentially. The weapon isn't finished yet, but if the Crithians feel threatened enough, they might try to use it anyway. Then we need to destroy it. Before they can activate it, Danny nodded. "I'm putting together a team. We'll infiltrate Crithios and sabotage the weapon. But Captain, it's a one-way mission. The odds of my team making it back are very low." Jake studied the older man. Danny was a soldier who had served humanity for decades. He deserved better than a suicide mission. "Is there any other way?" "No, sir. The disruptor is too well defended. A direct assault would cost thousands of lives. My team can do it quietly, quickly. We just need you to get us there." Jake wanted to refuse, to find another solution, but he knew Danny was right. "How many people do you need?" 20. "I already have volunteers." "Then you have authorization." "The Colonel? Come back alive." "That's an order." Danny smiled slightly. "I'll do my best, Captain." The day of departure arrived. 100 ships prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel. Admiral Bennett addressed the fleet one last time. "People of humanity," she said, her voice broadcast to every ship. "Today we embark on a mission that will define our species for generations to come. We're not going to Crithios for conquest. We're going for justice, for the people who suffered, for the world they stole from us, and most importantly, to send a message to every species in the galaxy. Humanity is no longer prey. We are the apex predators now, and we protect our own." Cheers erupted across the fleet. Soldiers shouted and banged their fists on bulkheads. The sound of humanity's rage echoed through the ships. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, watching Earth grow smaller as they moved away. Ben stood beside him. "Any doubts, Captain?" Ben asked quietly. Jake thought about the question. Did he have doubts? About the war? About the violence they were about to unleash? Yes, he had doubts. He wasn't a monster. He knew that what they were about to do would change humanity forever. They were crossing a line, moving from victims to aggressors, but he thought about the freed humans. About the 400 years of suffering. About Earth's devastated surface. "No," he said finally. "No doubts. The Crithians made their choice when they took our world. Now they live with the consequences." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Space twisted and bent around the ships. Stars stretched into lines. And 100 human warships disappeared into the darkness, heading toward the Crithian homeworld. Behind them, Earth slowly healed. Plants grew in the ruins, animals emerged from hiding, and the freed humans looked up at the stars wondering what would happen next. On Crithios, the Crithian collective had no idea what was coming. They were assembling their fleet, confident in their superior numbers. They saw humanity as a minor threat, a problem to be solved. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Crithian system. 100 warships appeared in a coordinated formation, their weapons already powered and ready. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Claire Bennett studied the tactical display. Crithios hung in the center of the screen, a green and blue planet not unlike Earth. Around it orbited hundreds of space stations, shipyards, and defensive platforms. The Crithian fleet was there too. Over 200 ships gathered for the assault on Earth. "They weren't expecting us," Ben Torres observed from his station on the Defiant Dawn. Jake Morrison nodded grimly. "They thought they had 2 more weeks. They were wrong." Across the fleet, human soldiers prepared for battle. Amy Sullivan climbed into her fighter, checking systems and weapons. Greg Carter loaded his rifle and secured his armor. Thousands of others did the same. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Bennett opened a channel to all ships. This is Admiral Bennett to all vessels. We've come a long way. 400 years of exile. 400 years of pain. Today we show the Crithians what that pain feels like. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will never be victims again. All ships advanced, the human fleet moved forward as one. A wall of steel and fury heading straight for Crithios. On the planet's surface in the Grand Council chamber, Prime Archon Velshara received the news. She was an ancient Crithian over 200 years old, and she had ruled the collective for 50 years. Human ships? She said, her voice filled with disbelief. Here, how is that possible? They must have traveled at speeds we didn't think were achievable, her military advisor explained. Our fleet isn't ready. Half the ships don't even have full crews yet. Velshara felt fear creep into her heart. The collective had underestimated humanity at every turn. First on Earth, now here. Launch all available ships, she ordered. Every defense station activate weapons and send a message to the human fleet. Tell them we wish to negotiate. The message reached Admiral Bennett within minutes. The Crithian Prime Archon appeared on screen, trying to maintain dignity despite her obvious fear. Admiral Bennett, Velshara began, this attack is unnecessary. We can reach an agreement. The collective is willing to discuss compensation for compensation? Bennett interrupted coldly. You occupied our world for 400 years. You enslaved our people. You destroyed our planet's ecosystem. And you think compensation will fix that? We can return Earth to you immediately. Withdraw all our forces. Provide resources to help rebuild. We already took Earth back, Bennett said. We didn't need your permission then, and we don't need it now. This isn't about Earth anymore, Prime Archon. This is about making sure you never threaten humanity again. Velshara's expression hardened. If you attack Crithios, you will start a war that will consume the entire galaxy. Other species will see you as aggressors. They will unite against you. Let them try, Bennett replied. Humanity survived 400 years in the void. We can survive anything. Can you say the same? She cut the transmission. Then she turned to her weapons officer. All ships open fire. The battle began. Human warships unleashed gravitational weapons on the Crithian fleet. Ships that had taken years to build were torn apart in seconds. The Crithian crews didn't even have time to scream. Defense platforms fired back, energy weapons streaming through space. But human shields held. Human armor was too strong. Technology developed through centuries of desperation proved superior to the Crithians' comfortable complacency. Amy Sullivan led her fighter squadron through the chaos. They dove toward the planet's surface, targeting ground-based weapons installations. Her fingers danced across the controls as she dodged incoming fire. Target locked, she announced calmly. Firing. Her missiles struck a planetary defense cannon. The massive weapon exploded, taking out 2 nearby installations with it. That's 3 for me, Amy said. Who's keeping score? Save the celebration for later, her squadron leader replied. We've got incoming fighters. Crithian fighters, slower and less maneuverable than the human craft, tried to intercept them. It was like wolves chasing eagles. Amy's squadron tore through them, destroying 2 fighters for every one they lost. On the surface of Crithios, panic spread. Citizens fled to shelters as explosions lit up the sky. They had lived in peace for centuries, protected by the collective's might. Now that might was crumbling. In orbit around the planet, the stellar disruptor hung like a dark promise. The massive weapon was incomplete but operational enough to be dangerous. Its crew scrambled to power it up, hoping to use it as a last resort. They didn't know that Danny Wright and his team were already inside. Danny moved through the disruptor's corridors like a ghost. His stealth suit made him nearly invisible, and his movements were silent. Behind him, his team of 20 spread out, each heading to a different critical system. They encountered guards, of course. Crithian soldiers protecting the weapon. Danny's team eliminated them quietly, efficiently. No alarms were raised. Team leader to all units, Danny whispered into his radio. Status report. One by one, his soldiers checked in. They had reached their positions. The charges were placed. Good work, Danny said. Set timers for 20 minutes. That should give us enough time to reach the extraction point. But even as he said it, Danny knew it was a lie. There was no extraction point. No rescue ship waiting. This was always a one-way mission. His team knew it too. They had accepted it when they volunteered. Danny placed his own charges on the disruptor's power core. Enough explosives to tear the entire station apart. Then he activated the timer and started moving toward the escape pods. He made it halfway there before alarms finally blared. The Crithians had found the bodies of their guards. Soldiers poured into the corridors, searching for the intruders. "Contact!" one of Danny's team members shouted over the radio. Gunfire erupted. Danny cursed and started running. He fired his weapon at Crithian soldiers who appeared in front of him. Bodies fell, but more kept coming. "All teams converge on Escape Pod Bay 7, Danny ordered. "We're leaving now." His soldiers fought their way through the station. Some made it. Others didn't. Danny saw 3 of his people cut down by enemy fire. He saw another trapped by closing blast doors. But he kept moving, because stopping meant everyone died for nothing. They reached the escape pod bay with 5 minutes left on the timers. 7 of Danny's 20 soldiers had made it. The others were dead or dying somewhere in the station. "Get in the pods," Danny ordered. "Go." His soldiers hesitated. "What about you, Colonel?" "I'll be right behind you. Go." They obeyed, climbing into the small escape pods. Danny waited until all 6 pods had launched. Then he turned and ran back into the station. "Colonel Wright, what are you doing?" Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the radio from the defiant dawn. "Making sure the job gets done, Captain," Danny replied. "If I leave now, the Crithians might find the charges and disarm them. I'm going to defend the power core until the explosives detonate. Danny, you'll die. I know, but that's okay. Everyone dies eventually. At least my death will mean something." Jake wanted to argue to order him back, but he knew Danny Wright. The man had made up his mind. "It's been an honor serving with you, Colonel." "The honor was mine, Captain. Take care of Earth for me." The timer reached 0. The stellar disruptor exploded. The blast was visible from the planet's surface, a brief second sun that lit up the sky. The weapon that could have destroyed entire solar systems was gone, along with Colonel Danny Wright and 13 of his soldiers. Jake closed his eyes briefly. Then he opened them and returned his attention to the battle. The destruction of the disruptor broke the Crithian spirit. Their last superweapon was gone. Their fleet was being destroyed. They had nothing left. Prime Archon Velshara made one final transmission. She broadcasted across all channels, not just to the human fleet but to the entire galaxy. "This is Prime Archon Velshara of the Crithian Collective. I am broadcasting this message as a warning to all species. Humanity has returned from exile. They are not the weak, primitive creatures we once knew. They have evolved into something far more dangerous. They are warriors without mercy, predators without equal." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "We made the mistake of taking their homeworld. We made the mistake of thinking they were extinct. We were wrong, and now we pay the price. To all who can hear this, beware humanity. They are no longer prey. They are the apex predators of the galaxy." Then she surrendered. Admiral Bennett accepted the surrender, but on harsh terms. The Crithian Collective would rebuild Earth using their technology and resources. They would pay reparations to the freed human slaves, and they would never ever set foot on Earth again. "If we see a single Crithian ship in the Sol system," Bennett warned, "we will return here and finish what we started." Velshara agreed to everything. She had no choice. The human fleet returned to Earth victorious but somber. They had won the war, but the cost had been significant. Over 3,000 human soldiers had died in the battle for Crithios. Colonel Danny Wright and his team were hailed as heroes. Jake Morrison stood in the memorial service held for the fallen. Thousands gathered on Earth's surface in a clearing that would one day be a forest again. Names were read aloud. Stories were shared. Tears were